So,
This meeting is being recorded.
okay, as I mentioned, we have Michael Leach will be presenting first on macro in Anilao and using diopters, snoots, single strobes. And because of time restraints, we're going to jump right into Michael right now, and then afterwards, Peter. And so Peter will talk about surface supplied wreck diving, and then some video from Mike Airy from Indonesia. So we have a nice variety of marine life. So Michael is new.
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Let's begin, right? This is our first time with Michael, so we're eagerly awaiting. So Michael, take it away.
So I'm trying to share my screen, and
Do you
when I click on it, it doesn't let me share it.
Share screen? It's not letting you, or
It is not. It the share screen is grayed out. Why don't you go to somebody else and I will see if I can figure this out. Sorry.
That's okay.
Running the most recent version.
I had to use my web browser to get in. The link would not let me in without doing it in the web browser. I wonder if that's part of the thing. I use Zoom all the time on with work, so I'm very familiar with the platform.
Interesting.
Oh, hold on. Maybe that'll work. All right. I think that'll work. Can you see this?
Perfect.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. I guess I'm back up. All right. So thank you for inviting me to speak here. So I went to Anilao about 2 months ago and had some pretty cool experiences there. So I thought I'd share that. If people want to break in at any time and ask questions, that's perfectly fine as well. So as Andy mentioned, I'm going to cover some of the macro things that I did, including with diopter snoots and using a single flash. So first of all, where is it? So Anilao is in the Philippines, and Philippines is located here. Can you see my cursor okay?
Yeah, but the images have not advanced. It's still on your title.
Okay.
So if you do that either manually or
So I have advanced it. Any luck?
no. Can you click with your cursor, click on the second image?
Did that work?
No.
Because I'm advancing it here. All right.
Okay.
That's weird.
Is this PowerPoint?
It is PowerPoint.
Okay. I don't use PowerPoint. I have hardly used it. So if any PowerPoint users have any suggestions?
Are you in slideshow mode, or are you?
I am in slideshow mode.
Okay, we are not. We have not followed that.
Okay.
Right now, what looks like it's highlighted is review and not slideshow.
All right, let me see if this works. All right, that'll work.
Okay.
So I took it out of slideshow mode. All right, so sorry about that. So where is it? So it's in the Philippines, and the Philippines is somewhat north of Indonesia and somewhat east of Vietnam. And then getting more specifically to Anilao, you fly into Manila, and then you take a car ride down to Anilao, and it's at the bottom here. You can see Anilao. It's a big area, kind of like a state, and it's known for its macro and its blackwater. And then within the Anilao area, we stayed at Crystal Blue Resort. This is run by Mike Bartek, who's very well known in the macro and blackwater photography fields. And we went as part of an underwater photography workshop, and this was organized by one of our friends, Tracy Winholt. She does have annual trips there. And every single day we started with some instruction that lasted anywhere from probably 30 minutes to over an hour. And that included image review from everybody that was there by Mike Bartek. And then he often gave us some directions about what he wanted us to do for certain techniques for the day. And then the next day when he reviewed our images, he would critique that. So a little bit about Crystal Blue. So Crystal Blue sits on the water. There's a hill behind it. You can see the resort. All the dives are from these Filipino boats that have the things off the side. I forget what they're called, but they stabilize the boats. And our group size, there were 4 people on each boat, 4 divers. And then we had the 2 of us, Virginia and I, had a private guide. And then the other people had their guide. So very personalized service. So this is a quick view of the some of the hotel rooms. I think there's 23 rooms there, so it's not very large. This is a dining area. Everything is done buffet style. This is the camera room. So they do have a very nice dedicated camera room, and everybody has their own station. So you've got your towel, and then you've got an area up above for batteries, for example. So there is a lot of space. And this is Virginia working on her yoga skills, but you can see right off the front, the ocean is right there, the channel, and then some of the dives are done actually across the way on that island. So this is where the instructions are held. So there are tables here, a couple of rows of tables. There's some more tables off to the left. There's a screen up here so Mike can display what he's trying to explain to people, or the photography reviews. So this is the Anilao dive sites. So his place is right here with the triangle. Then you can see there's a lot of dive sites on the main peninsula, and then as well on the island across the way. So my particular setup, I have a Sony RX100 5A. This is a compact camera. I put that in a Nauticam housing. I, until recently, did not want to carry more equipment. So that's one of the reasons I've gone, or I was using a compact camera. I have 2 CNC YSD2 strobes, and I use 1 or 2 of them depending on the dive. On this particular trip, I mostly used 1 of the YSD2s, and then I used 1 of the backscatter mini flashes. So this comes with a snoot. It's very small and compact. You can turn the light on so you can see where you're trying to target your flash. And on the right here, this is actually the flash with the snoot attached. And then you have what they call these aperture cards. They come with 2 different ones. One of them is circular and the other one is oval. And they have 4 different sizes. So you can move the snoot up and down or back and forth to change the size of your light. And then you can change the light shape using one of the cards. I actually found that if you have about a 45-degree angle, using the more oval aperture card allowed you to get more of a circular beam of light. And so I usually use the more oval version. I also used a couple of different diopters, and I don't actually know which one I used on most of my shots because I was swapping them in and out. So Nauticam has 2 diopters that they sell for compact systems. So one of them is a CMC1, it's 4.5x. Then they came out later, from what I understand, with the CMC2, and this is a 2.8x. And they came out with this because the 4.5x is actually not that easy to focus unless you've really figured things out, which took me a lot of dives and a lot of trips to finally get that nailed down. And so then I actually wanted something that was a little bit more magnification because you can actually be very still and lay on the sand for a lot of these shots. And so Mike let me borrow his WeFind 13X. This is more powerful than the CMC1, although I don't know the exact magnification. And in the United States, Kraken sells a version of this. From what I've gathered, Kraken is kind of like WeFind for North America, but not exactly. And I don't know the full business arrangement there. So I use a flip diopter to mount, a flip adapter to mount one of the diopters. That flip adapter is shown here. There's really two pieces to it. You screw the diopter onto your housing with this, and then you mount your particular diopter that you want into this flip. And so this is a double adapter, which I only have a single, but they do sell the doubles. And you can see here that it's mounted on the front of a housing. And then each one of these has a particular diopter. So you can either shoot with no diopter or you can flip either diopter on. The big advantage of using a system like this is that you can take images of larger subjects compared to an SLR or mirrorless, because they usually for macro are using a 90 to 105 millimeter lens. Whereas if I flip these two diopters off, I don't have a wide angle on here, but I still have a pretty good 24 to 70 equivalent type of view. So one of the downsides of the way that I was doing this is that I had one or two diopters in my pockets, and I would be screwing them on or off. And then I'd be also taking the snoot on or off, and needed to be very careful not to leave those in the sand, because these diopters are anywhere from about $300 to $600, and then the snoot's about $400, $450. So I also use floats to make my setup neutrally buoyant. I know some people prefer slightly positive. I know Nirupam at Blue Water Photo, he actually doesn't use any floats. So his setup is very negative in the water, but I find that using the floats reduces my hand fatigue. So this is what it looks like in the water. So this image is courtesy of Virginia. This is actually a wide angle setup, but I do pretty much the same thing where I'd have my flip adapter on instead of the wide angle. I have the Nauticam floats. I usually have to put some floats on the arms as well. And then I've got my flash. And again, for the macro, I would replace one of these with the backscatter mini flash. So how do you shoot macro with the Sony RX100 series? Compared to the TG, and I do have a TG4, it is more difficult. And what I have here is based on using my camera and then helping somebody who had a RX107. So again, it's not that easy. You really have to have certain settings and follow certain steps to maximize your chance to get a really good shot. And the biggest issue with this camera, I think, is getting that sharp focus in macro. So the lens I mentioned earlier is a 24 to 70 millimeter equivalent. The maximum f-stop with this system is 11. And I'm not a technical camera person, but I'm told that this in essence is equivalent to an f32 with an SLR. Now the images I found are usually not as sharp when you maximize your zoom or at either the lowest or the highest f-stop. So you really want to stay away from those. The ISO is also best at less than 400. And with the diopters, depending on which one you pick, with the lower magnification diopter, you need to be about 4 inches from the subject. And with a higher magnification, you need to be literally 1 inch away from the subject. So Some subjects don't like that, and you can spook them. So for settings, I usually use 1/320th of a second. This helps me get a blacker background. This shutter speed would not work with a lot of SLRs or mirrorless cameras because they often max out at 1/250th of a second, or you'll get that black bar. This does minimize potential motion blur, and I found that with my camera setup, if I shoot at 1/125th or 1/160, I often don't feel like it's as sharp. I typically use f10 for macro. I'm really trying to get that depth of field to make sure I can get my target in focus. And when I went to f11, which again is the maximum with this system, it really started to get a little soft on a lot of the shots, but I will say there have been some really good images I have taken with f11. The blurring of the background, the bokeh, is usually sufficient, but I don't have any room to play with it. My ISO, I usually use 1/60th, and then I usually use flash set on manual. So a couple other settings for Sony. I use what's called the DMF focusing on the shutter. This camera does not really have a back button type of focus. And I've read where there might be some complicated workarounds that I've never really explored. But this DMF focusing means that when I push the shutter, that it will potentially allow me to see this peaking. And the peaking allows you to see what areas are actually in focus if you have enough contrast for the camera to pick that up. And so when I do that, then I can actually be looking through, I look for the red, and that will tell me exactly what is focused. The red shows up pretty well underwater. I use spot focus, the very smallest option, and then I can move my spot around as needed if what I want is not in the center. And then the next trick I've found that's very important is I'll use what's called focus assist, and this will zoom in at 4x and then at 8x. And so I've set my trash button on the Nauticam housing to this zoom, and so that's very easy to reach with my right thumb. So I will lay down in the sand, I will press the shutter halfway, I'll look for that peaking, and then I'll zoom in to 4x and then even 8x to make sure that I'm in focus using that peaking and looking for that red color. So a couple of things I do, again, try and be as steady as possible. Laying in the sand is helpful. Obviously, you can't always lay on things, depends on what they are, but sand is usually okay. Just want to make sure there's nothing there that can hurt you. Fire urchins will hurt a lot. I found that out, although they don't bury themselves in the sand. You want to get it about the right distance based on your diopter. I found that this camera is really not good at focusing with the diopters. It will actually tell you from the focus lock that you're in focus, even though you're frankly not even close. But if you look through the camera screen and look for that peaking, you can actually tell that you're not in focus. And if you're in a stable environment, you can really start off at the right distance, and then things work out pretty well. The depth of field with my camera at least is literally only a few millimeters, and the higher in magnification you go and more zooming, the more shallow that depth of field is. But once I get it about the correct distance, again, I'll press that shutter halfway, look at the image. Is it look in focus? Is the peaking look like it's on the intended target? And if both look good, then I'll take that image. And despite that, I find that only about 10% of my shots are really what I would call spot on focus. And part of the issue is I believe that when I'm pressing that shutter down, sometimes it might refocus slightly. And you're also in the water, of course, things are moving ever so slightly. You move 1 millimeter and you're no longer in focus. So despite that, I think I got a lot of pretty good shots in Anilao. So I'm just going to start running through these and go through some of the thought processes. So a number of these nudibranchs only have scientific names, don't have common names. So this one I believe is Dora prismatica atromarginata. And I say I think because in the last several years, there's been a lot of genetic analysis of nudibranchs, and there's been a lot of reclassification of many species based on genetics and not based on what they look like. And so there are some good online resources now, but a lot of the classic books from some of the well-known authors on nudibranchs don't have the correct species at the present time. So this highlights the narrow depth of field. So the rhinophores here, that's traditionally what you want to get in focus. This is at f9, and I shot most of my images at f10, but this is f9. And you can see that this nudibranch, the rhinophores are in great focus, but even the front of this nudibranch, which is probably only a couple of millimeters away, you can already see it's starting to be out of focus. And then as you move down the back of the nudibranch, it's also out of focus. So based on this, again, I shot most of my stuff at f10, and my standard settings were the 3/20th of a second and the ISO of 160. And this is the only image I'm going to show at f9. So there's a lot of stuff in Anilao, and if you're interested in seeing small things and taking pictures of them, it's really a fabulous place to go. This is some type of decorator crab. We're not able to determine the species, but the crab is shown here, and it's holding on, and it's trying to mimic its environment. This is an Nembrotha chamberlaini, and I really like the Nembrotha species, the genus. There's a lot of them in Anilao, and they tend to be 2 to 3 inches in length, and they are extremely colorful. And some of them also tend to sit still and allow you to really take a lot of pictures. So this particular individual, I think I probably spent 20 minutes with it, and I probably shot about 80 images. So this shows what it is with the flash. You can see I've got the flash in the upper right, so I've got a shadow here. If I had been using dual flashes, I would have not had that shadow. And then when I go to using a snoot, I'm able to create a very black background and highlight only the nudibranch with a very small amount of what it was sitting on. So to get that black background, you can use your shutter speed, you increase that. You can use your ISO, make that very low, and that will reduce any ambient light detection and create that black background. So my basic settings cover this pretty well. And I have to do that to try and get my subjects in focus. But if you have an SLR or a mirrorless, you can actually play around with this a little bit more. And you can, you know, get a pure black background, get a semi-black background, or not get much of a black background at all. Oops. So this is a porcelain crab, again, an undetermined species, and it's on a sea pen. There are a variety of species of sea pens in Anilao, and figuring out which species they are was not something that I was successful with. But this was shot with a snoot also, and I moved the snoot back. So, and I had that aperture card fairly wide, so I was able to get the subject in all lit, and then the background, I was able to get that very dark. And this crab is actually feeding. I don't know if you can tell with what you're seeing there, but it's got whatever the things are called that it's out sweeping the small bits of food into its mouth. So this is a wide-eyed moray, and I shot this with a snoot and no diopter. Now, I think this shot would be very difficult or impossible if you're using an SLR or a mirrorless by yourself. But because I was able to flip the diopter out, and then I was able to take my snoot, and I put it literally over the top of the head of the moray. And fortunately, this particular subject was not spooked by that. And I was able to get the snoot right over him and get a very nice round circle and get the shot. This is not using a snoot. This is a paddle flap scorpion fish. It's one of the species of Rhinopeus that are found in Anilao. You may have heard that there's a lot of interest from all the photographers in shooting Rhinopeus. They're very interesting, and I have another picture later of a Rhinopeus that shows the one that people really like to take pictures of. But you can see good clarity on his eye, but again, using one flash, I get a little bit of shadow under the eye because the eye sticks out a little, and then the part over their eyes kind of sticks out even farther. So this is the exact same fish shot from literally the exact same position. And what I did is change the lighting a little bit. So I moved it more to the front. And so I got a little bit more texture from that. The Lightroom settings that I used were exactly the same. So I just copy and pasted the settings and didn't do anything different. So, you know, which is better? I think that really comes down to personal choice. But, you know, moving your strobe around, especially if you have one strobe, can help you get some different textures. This is a pygmy seahorse, Hippocampus bargibonti. And these guys are very small. I did shoot this with a snoot, and I used the snoot in this case to actually just be able to focus the light beam onto a subject that was in a very tight area and back hidden in this structure. So the seahorse is here. I know some people who aren't familiar with this don't always see it right away, but his tail is actually wrapping around down here. And he really tries to camouflage to mimic what it's on. And the settings, again, have been the same that I've been using as my standard. And that gave me a very good black background in this case. This is a Thecocirca picta nudibranch. And Mike pointed out when he was reviewing my images, he said, you have too many shadows. And so I had the snoot on this up fairly high over this particular individual subject. I actually thought it was really good until he pointed that out. And then I said, well, you know, I was trying to get that picture with the symmetrical shadow. Actually, I wasn't. That was kind of an accident, but it just shows some of the things if you go and submit to a contest, what some of the judges will be looking for, some of the very subtle things that they may be looking at that may make your shot either be a winner or not be a winner. So one of the things that I've shown all my nudibranchs so far have been head on. And this is a Cabangus regius, and this was shot with a snoot. Again, I was able to get the black background with that. I think the head-on views are the standard and what everybody likes to see, but it gets kind of old, so it's nice to see something different. This particular nudibranch has a lot of really interesting structure, things sticking out from it, and it is symmetrical. So I think that's pretty neat. You can get a really cool shot from the side with this particular nudibranch. So a little bit more about snooting. In my opinion, it's a bit of an exercise in frustration. So this shows some of the shots that I went through while I was trying to get the light in the right place. So my first shot, the light is to the left and in front of the subject, and it's too dark. So I have two choices. I can try and move closer to the subject and over a little bit. The problem is that the camera only has a very narrow window where it can actually focus, especially if you've got a diopter. So you have to really more rely on moving the snoot. And you move the snoot 1 or 2 inches, and that's way too much. So then you're trying to move it 1 or 2 millimeters, and it's not always easy. So the next shot, I was a little bit closer, a little bit behind the subject, still too dark. You can turn the snoot power up. So I turned that power up. This is pretty much the same, but location, but more power. So then I tried to move it over a little bit, move it over a little bit more, and you think you move it a little bit and it doesn't move as much as you think. And then finally here, you can see that I'm pretty much centered on the subject. I've got, I got a little bit of light in front, a little bit in front of the subject, a little bit behind. Ideally, this probably would have been a little bit more to the right, and I'm not lighting the back up very much. So this was getting closer to where, typically you want your snoot to be. And this particular subject is probably half an inch long, just to give you some context for size. Sometimes you get lucky. I don't even know whether I was using a snoot or not, or I presume I had a diopter on, but I was swimming by and I was looking in this coral, and I see these little beady red eyes sticking out. And again, by beady red eyes, this thing is, again, probably only half an inch at most in size. And so I took one shot, and it turned out it was in focus. And so sometimes you get lucky by having that drive-by one shot. I mentioned Blackwater at the beginning. We went on one Blackwater dive and we didn't see a lot happening. So we actually didn't go again because we were seeing so much during our regular dives, and you kind of have to trade off a bit of your regular dive with a Blackwater dive, just from a timing perspective. So we did not do much in the way of Blackwater, but Anilao again is known. We just didn't get lucky with that, but it's known to have tremendous Blackwater. So certainly something to look forward to if you do go. But I thought I'd throw a couple of pictures in here from Blackwater and other locations. So this is a sea butterfly that's taken in Cozumel. This sea butterfly is probably about an inch in size, so it's actually bigger on the screen than it is in real life. For Blackwater, I use, again, about that 1/320th of a second. I probably should have had a higher f-stop. In this particular case, I did not. And then I was using an ISO of 250. Again, to get that dark color, I probably should have been a little bit higher, get that black background. For those of you that are Star Trek fans, this reminds me of a Borg spaceship. And I got one other Blackwater here. So this is a common salp with a fish inside it. The fish actually hide inside the salps. They're not being eaten, but they hide inside the salps for protection. This was also taken in Cozumel. All right, back to Anilao. So this is a male ornate ghost pipefish, and I was taking pictures of it. And this two-tone pygmy squid, which is down here at the bottom now, it was just coming by the pipefish, and it attached to the lower jaw. Now, I was watching the whole thing. It didn't look like the pipefish really tried to go after it to eat it, and the pipefish mouth is actually way too small to fit this inside. But these squid actually are known to attach to things. And so the two-tone pygmy squid attached for probably about a minute. I was able to get a couple of shots, and this one turned out to be pretty good. That's just being in the right place at the right time and having my camera already set up to shoot this picture because I was shooting the pipefish to begin with. This is a painted frogfish, and it also happens to have a crustacean right below the eye, possibly an amphipod. I did put this out on Marine ID, and I didn't get a lot of comments other than possibly an amphipod. So I thought that was kind of neat. You can see his lure at the top here. Some more Nambrothas here, and these two are mating. And so this is actually on a somewhat vertical wall. It was leaning toward me, down somewhat. And so it was not an easy picture to take. So without my diopter, this is as close as my camera could get. So it was a bit too far away. And the farther you are, of course, you get increased risk of backscatter, especially when there's sediment in the water. And also you can see that there's some shadows from the strobe. So what I did then is I flipped my diopter on, and you can see that here, now I've got the diopter and you can see the housing. So I would have needed to zoom in. So this is a case where I don't really have the right lens / diopter combination to ideally put this into my camera. And again, you can see the strobe leading to the single strobe leading to the shadow. So of course, you can crop to zoom, which is what I did here. And again, I've got the shadows from the single strobe, but this was able to come closer to filling the frame, and you can see the mating there a little bit more clearly. So these are two yellow pygmy gobies. They live in this bottle. And the dive guides know where everything is. So these gobies probably get their picture taken a couple of times a week at least. But in this case, this black-banded demoiselle was trying to go in the bottle, and sometimes it would go in when the yellow pygmy gobies would go into the back of the bottle, and then they would chase it out. And so I probably photographed this for about 10 minutes, and it was a continuing ritual of the black-banded demoiselle going in and then getting chased out. There's also a shrimp in this, which I did not get a picture of adequately, but there is a shrimp in the bottle with the gobies as well. This is a Hypsilodorus rue. There's a couple of species of nudibranchs that look extremely similar to this. And they have this kind of gray-blue background with yellow and then dark blue spots. But this is feeding, so it's actually extending its mouth here on the right. And it was picking stuff off of the substrate here. I don't really know what it was eating. It looked like sand to me, but it kept attaching and then pulling and picking stuff off. This is an elegant crinoid squat lobster. And the cool thing about this picture is if you look closely on the tail area, there's actually eggs there. So this animal is carrying eggs. And you can see that the coloration of the squat lobster is very similar to the crinoid that it's living on. This is a Coleman shrimp on a fire urchin. So these shrimp are found in pairs on the fire urchin, and the female is the larger. So the female is here, and the male is here on the right. So this was shot with a snoot, and you're actually getting very close. When you do something like this, you're getting something close that can hurt a lot if you bump into it. So again, your diopter is putting you only 1 to 4 inches from the shrimp. The shrimp is not on the very edge of the fire urchin, so the spines are actually close and they're relatively close to your fingers. So something to be careful of. And here I shot this at 1/640th. That was a whoops, but you actually can't really tell any difference. So I have a couple of images of this just to show some differences. So this is with the snoot. This is also with a snoot, but I've zoomed in a little bit. The female and male are in better focus here, but unfortunately the male was blocked by the claw of the female. So, you know, part of the thing, you're trying to get things in focus, and then you're trying to get your subjects in the right place. And it can be very, very frustrating and time consuming to get a picture. So one thing I want you to pay attention to is the color. So you can see you've got that very brilliant purple color in these two shots, and that's with the snoot. So this is without the snoot, and I actually tried to get the colors fairly similar, but I wasn't able without a snoot to get that color at quite the same intensity. This is also zoomed in. You can see the male and the female pretty well, but the plane of focus was perfect for kind of the middle of the body of the female, and the front of her claws were not as sharp as I would have liked. So again, this is just shooting a lot of shots and hoping one of them is going to be what you want. And then this is zoomed in again without the snoot. And in this particular image, the female is in really good focus. You can see the detail on her antenna. You can see the detail on the claws and the little hair-like structures. But the male is kind of buried himself a little here on the right. So again, not a perfect shot. This is a yellow-lipped sea crate. This is a very venomous sea snake, but they're actually pretty docile. These guys would swim around. They literally completely ignored the divers. And if you were shooting a picture, again, being still, shooting macro, they would literally swim right over your hands. They would swim right in front of your camera and kind of do a photobomb. But they really were completely ignoring the divers, and we generally ignored them because you don't want to move quickly and startle them because they won't bother you if you don't bother them. So what enabled me to take this shot of the entire snake is the fact that I had a compact camera. I was able to flip the diopter off. I reduced my shutter speed and f-stop so I could get some light at this greater distance versus macro. And again, I think with an SLR or mirrorless setup, something like this would have been impossible. A little bit closer. Actually, the snake coiled itself around, so it looks like its head is attached to two parts of its body. That's really just an optical illusion. Again, this shot might have been possible with an SLR or mirrorless that's set up for macro, but there's actually a fair amount of sediment in the water, and I think it would have been pretty difficult to get a good shot from much distance. This is not my picture, but this is one of these crates, and you can see the fangs are very small. They actually have to kind of latch on and chew a little bit to envenomate their prey, or a person if the person really made them angry. All right, so this is the Rhinopeus that everybody really wants to take a picture of. This is Rhinopeus frondos. This is also known as the weedy scorpionfish. There are lots of shadows here from the single strobe. It does give a lot more texture. So again, even if you're using two strobes, I know some people will set them on different powers or different angles so that even if they're getting some of that secondary light, that they can still get some of that texture. And if you need some orientation, the mouth is right here. The eye is here, one eye's here, one's on the other side. And then it's got these, for lack of a better word, eyebrows, very beautiful pectoral fins. This is an emperor shrimp. It's on a brown sandfish sea cucumber. So these do tend to live on these sea cucumbers. You'll notice also that this shrimp is not symmetrical. It has a bulge here on the left side. And this is actually Bopiridae isopod parasite that lives in the left gill, and it causes that bulging. This is a pink eye goby. These tend to live in schools over the Acropora species coral. Anytime you get close, they tend to retreat into the coral. So I actually had to sit there and wait for quite a while and not move for some of them to come back out. So this is where having an SLR or mirrorless would be an advantage, because you could set up farther away and your subjects might be more willing to come out and have their picture taken. This is a Reticuloidea halgerda. I really like the lines on this and the texture. It's a kind of a very different looking nudibranch. Again, shot this one a little higher than I anticipated, but that was an accident and it worked out. This is a flamboyant cuttlefish. So I wanted to get a straight on view. So the eyes, one eye is here on the this side, the other eye is right here. But this is a straight on view of the flamboyant cuttlefish, which is very beautiful. This is a more traditional view from the side. And again, this was just shot with the single strobe. This is a bobbit worm. These have been reported to reach up to 10 feet long. It was shot with a snoot, and it really helps highlight the structure of the mouth. So it has, there's actually 2 of these pinchers on each side. One of them has these teeth in it. And when the tentacles, there's 5 tentacles here, when they get touched by a fish, that will trigger the worm to close the pinchers. And it's reported that it can be so strong that it can actually cut a small fish in half. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the story is. I also don't know if they ever will bother divers if you happen to lay on them in the sand, but I would not want to try. This is another Nembrotha milleri, and there's an emperor shrimp on it. Again, commensal type of relationship. This is a very beautiful and uncommon nudibranch. So it's actually coming toward us. The rhinophores are, here's one and here's the other rhinophore. And then it's got this kind of lumpy, bumpy, tan, light brown color to the actual body. Very, very unusual. And these are actually fairly large. This is probably about 4 inches in length. More standard nudibranch. This is Chromodorus willani. It was sitting up on top of the substrate, and you can actually see the current is blowing the gills and the rhinophores to the left a little bit. So there was current there sometimes, and that made shooting sometimes a little bit challenging. And then my last image here is a sapphire flatworm. Again, very beautiful colors in Anilao. So the images that were not mine were taken from a couple of different sites, just so people are aware of that. And then open it up for any questions.
Wow. Michael, that was very impressive. But it's amazing what you can do with that camera and that camera setup.
Those
I
are
had a
gorgeous.
question on the, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I had a question on the one where the color didn't come out when you used the snoot. Or
Yeah.
it did come out, you used the snoot and it didn't come out with your regular flash. Do you think that's the difference between the actual light that was being used or the fact that it was snooted? And why would that change the color so much?
I don't know. I didn't play around with it much to test that out. In fact, I only noticed this when I was putting this presentation together, and obviously I'm not an Anilao anymore. But the color temperature of the backscatter mini is supposed to be fairly similar to the CNC. So I don't think the color temperature of the light actually played a significant role. So I don't have a great answer for you. I actually played around in Lightroom and tried to get the same colors, and I was not successful in doing that. I suppose if I played more, maybe I could get there, but I spent about 5 or 10 minutes and couldn't do it.
Okay, did someone else have a question? Was that?
Gorgeous pictures. Did the guide help you with this, or did you find these easy to find,
So we paid for a private guide, quote unquote. So the normal guide structure is 4 divers per guide. And then if you pay for one, you can either have it by yourself, or Virginia and I shared a guide. They found many of these. And part of the deal is you jump in the water and they literally know where this stuff is. So for example, the yellow pygmy gobies in the bottle, they knew where that was. So you jump in, they show you that, you start taking pictures, and to get these images with this level of clarity and everything, I'd say we spent anywhere from probably 2 minutes to 25 or even 30 minutes on an individual subject. So the guides were off finding other things. things. And in fact, they were usually tapping us on the shoulder and saying, "Are you ready for something else?" So in general, I would say we did not find them, but part of that was the structure of, they know where to look. They know where these things are. When I first started diving and taking pictures, I didn't know that nearly every anemone in the Caribbean, for example, not every, but many of them have shrimp around them. I didn't know that. So now I know that. So now I know if I go by most anemones, they're going to have squat anemone shrimp or Peterson shrimp or something around them if I look carefully. So these guys know where to look, and it really, really helps. So we, on most dives, not all, there were a couple that were not that great, but most dives, they had things lined up for us to shoot. When we were done with whatever the subject was, we were already on.
Great. That's great.
All right. Well, Michael, again, that was fabulous presentation and really great explanation of how the camera works, how it best performs, and what settings you use, what diopters you use, and why. So that was very, very helpful. So I thank you very much for that. Because of time, we're going to move right along to Peter. And so thank you again, Michael. And Peter, we're going to take us now into another form of technical diving.
Okay, can you see, I've just put up the PowerPoint presentation. Can you see that on the screen?
Not yet, just you.
Oh, okay, then that's not good. I had it
So
down
Peter,
here.
you're making me feel a little bit better for all the struggles I had.
No, Michael, don't even give
Uh-oh.
it a thought. It's common enough. So it's
Let's see what we got here. Hang on a second here. Okay, well, Michael, what did you do? You got out of a slideshow presentation, you said?
Yes, I had to get out of slideshow, and then I was able to advance. But we're not even seeing your screen. So
did you hit share screen, Peter? On the very
I
bottom?
believe I did. Just a second, please.
Because we really don't want to keep looking at you. You know what I mean?
I know. That's really not photograph. I'm not really that photographic.
So
Always
Peter,
look
the
better
other
behind.
thing, when I clicked share screen, I ended up clicking on window. So not the entire screen, but I clicked on window. Do you see that? In an
No,
upper.
advanced sharing options, multiple. Let's see here.
So I
Just a
picked the
second.
exact window for the PowerPoint. I didn't just do my screen.
Okay, I
How's
think
that?
it's shut. Yes.
That's
very
it.
good. That's it. Very good.
Okay, yes, I chose that. Okay. And that's it? Is that coming through as the full screen then?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for the help, Michael. That really did help. Okay, so this is the title of this presentation is Surface Applied Wreck Diving for a reason, because my model is going to be a surface applied diver. Now, we usually go after marine life and we use divers to enhance our photos. But I have a special fondness for this. This is actually something that I've been doing for many, many years. I was a commercial diver for over 13 years. And this was actually in our dive school. This was the first outfit or the first diving system that we ever used was the Mark V. This is something that was incorporated in the U.S. Navy in 1916.
Oh my God.
And it was decommissioned in 1984. So it had a pretty long run with the U.S. Navy, and it had a very distinguished past and history with them too. If you think back to even days of Pearl Harbor, all the ships that were sunk in Pearl Harbor, the divers working to rescue the people who were trapped or unfortunately the people who did not make it, and also to remove the ships out of the water to refloat them, all used this system here, the Mark V. So it has a very long, distinguished history, and I do have a photo of myself as a young man in one of them, but you probably wouldn't recognize me. I had a full head of hair back then. So let's see. this is a group here that we meet. We used to meet twice a year, the Northeast Diving Equipment Group, and there's a lot of old commercial divers and military U.S. Navy divers. We get together and we share our, our passion for surface applied diving. We used to get together in Dutch Springs, and unfortunately, because what's been going on with Dutch Springs lately, we haven't been able to do that. And we've got together and used a lot of our old equipment here. As you can see, it's a submarine escape outfit. Some of this looks pretty crazy. This is a Russian sniper outfit, diving up here. It's kind of hard to see, but at the top of his head here, there's actually a metal latch, which goes down. It's hard to, if I could put my cursor on it right here, if you can see that. That's so that the diver can actually open up the hood, push the hood down past his face, take his shot, and then put the hood back up, and then go back underwater and remove himself from the area that he's in. This also looks like it's probably like some kind of bad science fiction movie. This is a helmet, a bubble helmet that we have here. He's not filled with water or smoking in there. It's just all fogged up because it wasn't a flow of air. But back to the Mark V. This is what we got together here. And I found diving in Dutch Springs was a limiting factor for the Mark V divers. Basically, what we did is we had a lot of shots like this. To me, they were static. It's the Mark V diver. He's standing underwater or he's walking underwater, but it really didn't show the diver in the way it was meant to be. Sometimes we put two divers together. Here we have the Mark V diver here on the right-hand side, and on the left, more modern hat. It's a Superlight 17B. So we put the two divers together, but we were limited at the type of photos we could get at Dutch Springs. Dutch Springs didn't really offer us that much. How can I say this nicely? It didn't offer us a range of photos that would be more interesting. Like I said, these images all looked a little static to us, at least to me. I mean, we did try to spice it up a little bit, and we added our sense of humor to it, and we'd have a couple images where we try to play around with them and stuff like that. But it really didn't take hold. And after a few years of doing this, I wanted to move on and do something else. So in 2016, I did get a group of divers here, and we went up to Tobermory, Ontario. I don't know if anybody's ever been up to Tobermory at all, or has done any shipwreck diving up there, but they have a rich history of shipwrecks up there. And this was something that I considered to have set the stage to more accurately depict a Mark V diver. I did go up at the beginning of the year in first week of March, just as the ice broke up, and I went to meet the owners of Divers Den, Mark and Kelly, married couple that own the shop, and we talked extensively to them about what my project was and how I wanted to photograph the divers and how we wanted to put them in certain settings that look realistic, and how we wanted to come across with this. So after talking to them, we did do a couple dives here. This is one of the tugs, it's called, I believe it's the Alice G here. And this was in, I'm going to say it was about 32.5-degree water when we got up there. The ice had just broken up off the top of the lake. So the visibility was phenomenal, which was great for us. And there's another angle of the wreck here. This wreck here, if you can just hold on to this image here, I will show you this on the last image of what I did with this shipwreck here. So we discussed the different shipwrecks that they had to offer, and they came up with at least 4 of them. This is the boat that we had that they gave us so that we can use our station, and this is how we set up our station here. It's hard to see here, but there's actually a compressor over in this area here, a volume tank with a filter system, connected with by deck whip to another volume tank with a manifold system and spare air here just in case the compressor dies out. And this is our umbilical cord, which was connected to the diver's outfit. So you can see there's quite a bit of equipment here, and that's not including the scuba gear that we needed for the other support divers and for myself. This is the team here. The diver himself, Vince Scarponi, he's from New Jersey. Raymond Tucker, he's from upstate New York, and Wayne Gerhardt in the blue. He's from, actually he's in Delaware now. So these are the gentlemen that helped me out with the Mark V part of this. As you can see at the part of the issue, or one of the issues that we had with surface supply divers was that mooring up on a shipwreck like a regular scuba diving vessel would be wouldn't cut it for us. We had to have at least a 2 or 3 point system that was moored to the bottom, so we didn't have the boat moving around as much. The diver was physically connected to the boat, so we just didn't have an anchor line down and just connected on that end, because if the boat was to blow around, that diver would be pulled up off the bottom. So we had to make sure that the vessel was actually very stable. So the shipwrecks that actually the dive shop recommended were these 4 here. Was the WL Wetmore, the City of Cleveland, the Niagara II, which was the only metal shipwreck, and then the Alice G, the one that I showed you at the beginning, and I'll show you what we came up with for that wreck itself. So the Wetmore was the first shipwreck that we did, and we had only 1 weekend to complete this. Here's let's see if I can do this here, just to show you. Here we have the diver as he's descending from the boat. You see he'll wrap his legs around the down line and then lower himself to the bottom. Now that suit weighs about a little over 200 pounds total.
Whoa.
And underwater, I mean, yes, you can go neutral, and you can actually do an emergency ascent in that suit too, if you're practiced at it. Now, we also had to have a support team for the diver too. We had support divers, and they would have to take care of the umbilical that he was dragging behind him. We didn't want to get caught up on any of the, wrong one, on any of the debris from the wrecks itself. So we had these 2 divers here from Diver's Den, which would help with the diver himself to getting him into place. The diver could walk into place in some of the spots, and in other locations, we actually had to physically lower him down by hand and place him so that he wouldn't disturb or ruin any of the historical shipwrecks that we were photographing with. So the Wetmore has, unfortunately, its prop is not, it's been destroyed. There's only 1 blade left here. And this was one of the areas that I wanted to photograph the diver on. The prop is probably the most recognized part of any shipwreck. And then we would move him around and stage the diver. And of course, communication is very important. If you don't talk to the diver and tell him what needs to be done, then you can't just sit there and start giving him hand signals. The diver has communications to the surface, but if I'm on scuba and everyone else is on scuba, we don't have any communication to the surface. So it gets very difficult to tell the diver to move to the left, move to the right, or try, to pose himself in a specific way. So we had to discuss this all beforehand, and there's a lot of planning that went on before this. And these are some of the more noticeable parts of the Wetmore itself. And having him stand next to the boiler is one thing, but then we were trying to make it look like he was actually working on it. Vincent has a wrench. I told him to put it onto the boiler itself to make it look like he was working on something, and to make it look a little bit more realistic. I mean, when the divers are in the water, they were there to work. They weren't there just to go sightseeing or look at what was on the bottom. So here we have With the wet more, excuse me, you don't know how to do this. Yeah, okay. So now we have, oh, there's sound here. Yeah, we have the diver being lifted up and brought back to the boat. You can see he's going hand over hand on the downline. And the downline is actually very important for the surface supplied diver. And then we had the bring him back to the boat, up to the ladder. Then he would lift himself up, and of course, back up to the stern. Okay. So the next wreck that we had was the city of Cleveland. Now, the city of Cleveland has this huge intact propeller. But when we got there, the time of day that we got there, unfortunately, was the wrong time of the day. As you can see, I have the diver standing next to the prop here. However, if you look up here in the center part of the screen up here in the top, I was shooting into the sun. And unfortunately, when you're shooting into the sun, you're not going to get great shots. The only way around it was I couldn't move the diver or the wreck, so I had to move myself. And you can see what night and day difference just by shooting into the sun and then by having the sun behind you. Just vastly different, especially with the color to it. And I have my video lights here that I use. I haven't been using strobes in some time. I do use the big blue video lights for fill in light here now. A lot of this stuff. Oh, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but this was all taken with the Canon 5D Mark III at the time with the 15mm lens. So here we had a lot of the engine room, a lot of structure on the shipwreck, which adds interest to it. And then, of course, having the diver standing in the midst of all this. As you can see, the prop is here in the back. There's the prop shaft going straight up, and this is, of course, where the engine is for the diver. So I could get some good shots of the diver here, making them look a little bit more interesting, especially if it's not like in Dutch Springs where he's just standing there at the bottom or just walking around aimlessly on a barren bottom at all. So the third wreck was the Niagara II. This is the only metal wreck that we had, and this one was a little deeper. We were working at a 60-foot table, and this was only to the pilot house. So we did a little prep work beforehand. We had the support divers come down, tie the downline to the rail just outside of the pilot house. And this was my main, how can I say, the main background that I wanted for my shots. This is what I wanted to photograph with my diver in it. So as you can see, we have the diver coming down, and at a 60-foot depth, we were again at a limited time, especially with decompression. We didn't want to deco a Mark V diver in the water, hanging there. It just becomes more complicated at the time. So beforehand, before the dive, we planned this. We settled on a 35-minute bottom time total to get all the photos that I needed to get. Wanted to make sure that everyone was safe and that we could have the diver up and back up on the boat before that 60-minute no decompression limit was up. So we had the line tied off to the rail system, and you could see this downline right here in the background, right back here. The diver then comes down to the pilot house. He knew immediately that I wanted him to go into the pilot house itself and how I wanted him to position his hands. And he would also take instructions from me with my hand gestures that we worked out on the boat itself before we got down to do this wreck. Now, this was a little bit more difficult photographing this because you've got a lot of available light here in the background. As you can see, it's coming through. And I had to evenly light up the inside of this and get the diver completely lit up, also with the wheel itself. And this was actually the most difficult shot I tried to get here because of all this light in the background that was coming through. I did change angles, as you can see. It did help with the with too much light coming out in the background. Still, as you can see in the left-hand corner here, it's pretty well lit up, but then you got more detail here in the right-hand side. You can actually see, make out part of the rail on the outside of the pilot house here. So after I got these shots, I motioned to Vincent to come on out to this outside of it, and just did a couple of these, for the lack of a better term, and I'm sorry to use this, the hero poses, where he just kind of stood there and just looked, you know, like a regular like a regular Mark V diver. Oh, excuse me. And that was it. Like I said, we just spent 35 minutes on that, trying to get those handful of photos, and then had to get him back up to the boat because we did not want to risk any decompression time in the water for him. It just would have been too difficult for us to handle at the time. So the fourth wreck here is the Alice G, and that's the one that I showed you at the beginning. Now, this is the one that I dove in at the beginning of March. We went after Labor Day, when all the crowds were gone. That's when the dive shop owners told us that would be the best time, and there wouldn't be any other, there wouldn't be too many scuba divers around diving on the wrecks, and the water was still warm enough, so that was the best part. Well, the Alice G is actually a shoreline. It's a shored wreck, and you can just jump in the water and swim towards it. The bottom is very silty. Because it is silty, it gave us an extra added level of difficulty for the Mark V diver, because he's going to be clunking around the bottom here. So this, again, the Alice G is surrounded with a lot of silt all around this wreck here. And it's kind of hard to see, but you can see a little silt that's kicked up over here from one of the divers. And it is very difficult to walk around in here and still get clear shots. So what I did is I went down beforehand. This was Mike, one of the owners of shop here, and I had these small LED lights, 1200 lumens each, and I have them on these makeshift tripods that I bought, these really cheap tripods at the mall. Chopped the heads off, drilled a hole through the post, and then I was able to attach these lights on the wreck itself, inside the wreck itself. And then we placed our diver down in the water. And we actually, like I said, we hand placed him there. So he didn't walk around or move one bit. And that allowed me the ability to swim around and take the shots that I wanted. So I was able to illuminate the gunnels here of the wreck. As you can see, the lights that I placed inside lit up the wreck beautifully. The light that Vincent is holding is a tungsten light. It's the old style tungsten light. I wanted that yellow light, even though the LED lights do throw off a more bluer or whiter light. Wanted to keep this as historically accurate as possible. So we had Vincent here, just the poor guy. He must have been bored out of his mind. I feel bad for him. After a while, he just stood there, and I told him not to move until I was done. And after about, I'm going to say 25 minutes or more of me swimming around and photographing at different angles, experimenting with different apertures. I do shoot manual. I only shoot manual, even with the fully automated systems. I prefer to shoot manual on everything. Even playing with my EV meter, going -1 or +1 or what have you. I just shot dozens and dozens of images until I could get the one that I liked the best. Just kept, you know, in the old days with film, you would bracket. Luckily with digital cameras, you could see, you know, what you're shooting right off the bat, and then correct for it and move on and, you know, go try something else. So this shot did take me a good, like I said, 25 minutes easy to get. That's it. And I'd just like to say thank you to everybody in the Northeast Diving Equipment Group, and also the divers, Divers Den in Tobermory. this was a group effort, and they helped me pull this photo shoot off without any problems at all. It was really great of them. And I would recommend them if you guys ever do any shipwreck diving, if you go up to Tobermory at all.
Wow. Well, thank you, Peter. That was
That's
more than impressive. The amount of work to all the work that you did for that last shot, going down ahead, putting in lights, but it really paid off. It was a fabulous image.
There was a lot of pre-planning, a lot of discussion. We did have another type of we had an underwater model with us too. Her husband was her support diver. We were going to go with the mermaid effect, but it didn't work out. And you know, the first thing I told her was, I said, safety is first, and you know, we're not here to get anybody injured or do anything just for a photo. And you know, I had to make sure that everyone understood this. I mean, they were very, very helpful, and they were, you know, great about the whole thing. I think we're having a problem here. Can you see me at all, or?
No, it's actually turned to a black screen.
Okay, that's what I thought. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Well, actually, we're running a little late, so I'm gonna, unless there's anyone has any questions,
That's
I'm gonna
fine.
swing over to Mike. Does anyone have any questions, Peter, before we end?
I just had one question. So when you breathe air from the surface, is it pressurized somehow? I've never done anything like that.
It's approximately 125 psi. It is pressurized to a point. You're not breathing in 3000 psi if you had an aluminum 80 or a steel tank or anything like that. No, the volume tanks and the compressor itself, usually it's at about 125 psi. Pretty much what you would have at your from your regulator also. But the surface supply diving, that's a free flow type hat. So the air is just constantly coming in and going out. And it doesn't rely on you breathing in and breathing out like we do on a regulator for scuba diving.
Okay.
Well, thank you again, Peter. That was fabulous. Very, very interesting.
Thank you. I wonder how I can get back to the screen here.
Okay, well, Mike Airy, Mike has come back from Indonesia, and I'm sure we're going to see some, instead of we're going now from the Great Lakes to Indonesia. So this would be quite a switch. Okay, so Mike, you were in Lembe, and where else did you go?
Lembe and the Darwin Islands.
Okay.
So
Where are the-
nice. Can you see
is
my
that-
screen?
Yes, we do. All
Okay.
right.
All right. You have a question?
Where are the Darwin Islands? Is that part of already in your presentation, or I'm not familiar
Oh,
with?
yes. Yep. It's in the Indonesia. It's all part of the Indonesia archipelago.
Mhm.
The Lembe Strait was where we started our trip. This is the Lembe Resort. It was a beautiful place to stay. We spent several days here initially doing muck diving, and this is where I really focused on macro stuff. Usually I shoot with the paralens, but on this particular part of the trip, I really used the TG5 much more than the paralens because everything was macro down in the muck. So this is a drone shot of the resort. It was a beautiful place to stay, great food, really beautiful rooms. It was just a fantastic stay. And from there, we'll start off. This is a nudibranch that I got a nice shot of. I can't wrap my tongue around its Latin name. It has far too many vowels. slowly making its way along the ocean floor. If you look closely in the foreground, you'll see what I think might be some crabs,
Mhm.
little translucent crabs in the foreground, which I haven't been able to identify. This was about the only time I've ever actually videoed a nudibranch.
Now, this video, the video was with the TG5?
Yes, all of this is, these are all shot with the TG5. All the macro is TG5, the wide angle is with the paralens. So now we have a frogfish, and this frogfish is kind of showing that he doesn't really appreciate the paparazzi. He's saying, get lost. This is a painted frogfish. Again, shot with the TG5. These are all shot in the Lembeh Strait in Indonesia. Here we have a long arm octopus. And I was fortunate that I was able to get the shot while the octopus was preparing a lair. What he's doing is he's gathering in some of the surrounding sand. And then shortly afterwards, you'll see that he pulls his tentacles in and starts digging around underneath. And I assume what he's doing is he's loosening things up so that he can fit his mantle inside. You can see he starts like really pumping up, and then he squeezes himself in.
Yeah, he's gone.
Well,
And then he's gone. Now we have what was a really great find for me. I've been dying to get a great shot of a peacock mantis shrimp for the longest time. And I finally got the money shot here. This is the peacock mantis shrimp is one of the larger and more colorful of the mantis shrimps. They can get to be as long as 7 inches. And this guy kept climbing in and out of his little hole there. I changed my angle and got a really nice close-up shot here. I was really pleased with the way the TG5 was able to capture the colors. Now our next shot is, I'm out of order here, hold on. The Indonesian ocellated flounder. And it gets its name from the white spots on its back, which are thought to resemble eyes, which is the word ocellated. They live on the sandy bottoms, and they're an edible fish. They don't really let's see, here we have the blue swimmer crab. And this is actually a very important food product in the area. They export these guys. They're apparently very tasty, although I did not try any. I was very fortunate that he came out of his crevice to put on a little show for me. He seemed kind of curious. And again, the colors from the TG5 were just marvelous. And then back into his little crevice after the show was over. Now here we have another huge score for me was the blue ring octopus, the notorious blue ringed octopus, known for being one of the world's most venomous marine animals. And you'll see it starts flashing its blue rings at me to let me know that, yeah, you're getting close enough there, buddy. And despite its small size and relatively docile nature, it is very dangerous if provoked. And these are all still, we're in the Lembe Strait. This is the Bengay or Bengai cardinal fish. They were, the species was restricted to the Bengai Islands of Indonesia, but due to the aquarium trade, a population has become established in the Lembe Strait. So I was able to get some great shots of this little pair. This is the aptly named narrow-lined pufferfish. Seen here grabbing a little bite on the reef. And one curious fact about this particular fish is that they don't have scales. If you look closely, you can see the texture it has skin. And I'd really like to give this guy a napkin because he's making such a mess while he eats. Now, next up, we have the glass anemone shrimp or peacock tail anemone shrimp. The body is almost transparent with white spots. They live symbiotically with sea anemones and corals and jellyfish. Now this one is the dwarf lionfish. It's a juvenile. It's only about 3 inches long. You have to be careful to watch out for those dorsal spines. Those are the venomous spines along its back. They reach a maximum length of about 6 inches, but this guy was a juvenile. It was only about 3 inches long, but absolutely beautiful with the coloration and all the spines and fins. Now here we have a very popular sea anemone, apparently, covered in marine life. There's the porcelain anemone crab. There's 2 different species of shrimp. If you look at the top, middle, and the bottom right. And then there's 4 different fish swimming around. The Clark anemone fish, another one of those Bengay cardinal fish, The little guys in the foreground with the horizontal stripes, those are actually juvenile parrotfish. Now here we have the flamboyant cuttlefish. This is one of my favorites. Colors and the changing pattern as it gallops along the seabed. This was a particularly tricky one to catch because trying to keep them in frame and in focus was quite a challenge. Here you can see the pattern as it changes along the mantle. He's on his way somewhere, but now we go from Lembe. After that, we spent a little over a week sailing on the Raja Armpit Aggressor in and around the Darwin Islands. And this was a beautiful boat, all wood and great food. It's just a marvelous live aboard. Highly recommended. And one thing we went is out in the Sulawesi Sea, east of Borneo. We encountered a whale shark with her entourage. This is a young female whale shark. And I was able to get nice and close to get a great shot of this whale shark and her entourage, all of her followers. She's obviously very popular. This is another shot of the same whale shark from a different angle. I was able to get really close as she came to the surface to do a little feeding. All of these wide angle shots are taken with the paralens. And this particular whale shark, she was a little younger than some of the whale sharks I've seen. I didn't have to worry too much about trying to stay away from her tail. Now, this particular shot is a literal wall of blackfin barracuda. This was a huge school of barracuda. It was so thick that it actually blocked out the sun and left me in shadow. Now, this is a shot, a montage of all of the turtles that I encountered. I encountered more turtles in Indonesia than I have in any other country that I've visited. Most of them are green sea turtles. One of the Darwin Islands is actually a sea turtle sanctuary. And at night from the boat, our lights would attract all the little baby sea turtles and they'd come swimming out. And we would stand looking over the side, watching them bonking their heads into the side of the boat. They were absolutely adorable. Just dozens of these tiny little green sea turtles. This is a hawksbill. This is another green sea turtle. This old fellow was just huge. You you can see the way the mass of its shell and its fins. This is a night dive, another huge sea turtle. This particular green sea turtle was as long as my wife is tall. It came swimming up towards us, and it was just gigantic. Another green sea turtle just hanging out in the reef.
Did you say we saw 8 on one dive?
We saw so many turtles on one dive. We saw as many as 8 sea turtles. Now, this is a dive site called Two Sticks. It was just a very beautiful drift dive, nice relaxing dive along the wall. And I was just taken by how the sunlight was shining down, showcasing all the colorful marine life and the beautiful reef. This is the Broad Club cuttlefish. It is the second largest cuttlefish in the world and can grow up to as 20 inches in mantle length and weigh up to 22 pounds. This is a black-spotted sea cucumber crawling along, searching for food with its paddle-shaped tentacles. And this just kind of creeps me out. It makes me think like it should be in some kind of H.P. Lovecraft story. And then here we have a couple of domino damselfish that are mating. You can see the female is wiggling. I assume she's laying eggs there while the male is coming by to do his business. And then finally, this is a montage of all the beautiful sea anemones I saw while I was diving in the Sulawesi Sea. The wide angle shots again are with the Paralens, and the macro shots are with the TG5.
Ten plane rides over 16 days.
And that's it.
Wow. Wow. This is absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
But it was one heck of a trip.
It was a great trip. Absolutely. It was quite an adventure. We
Stop share.
actually had to take 10 flights in total,
Wow.
round trip.
Oh my God.
That red button, stop share.
A question on the TG5 video. What did you use for lights?
Oh, I have two big blue 4,000 lumen video lights.
Mhm.
And that was used for all the macro stuff and some of the wide angle.
So you use the same with paralens too? You use the
Oh, yeah.
same?
Yep,
Yep.
and my standard setup is my handle with the two big blues. I have the TG5 housing mounted in the middle of the handle, and then I have the paralens mounted on the cold shoe of the TG5 housing.
Oh, okay.
Did you have a tripod of any kind in Lemba?
Nope,
Oh, wow.
nope, that was
Great.
all desperately holding my camera as steady as I could. I actually learned that if I extend the video lights out as far as my arms will allow, it makes the housing very, very stable. I
Gives
don't
it-
use any
bit.
buoyancy or anything like that. I just, the weight of the lights seems to prevent any type of horizontal movement.
Gives real nice light, very nice, nice lighting.
Yeah, they're great little lights. They have a nice, cool color to them. They're 6,500 Kelvin. And I can set both the paralens and the TG5 to match that. So I get really good color reproduction.
And Whitney sells them now.
And Whitney sells big blues now.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa.
Whitney. Little plug there for you.
So if anyone has any questions, because I know we're already at 8:45, so that's why. Sorry to cut this short, Michael. It was a fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
And if we have, next month and October, we have a couple of openings so if anyone has anything that they would thinking of presenting, please let Whitney know and sign you up, because we definitely do have a couple of spots, so. All right, it's getting late, so thank you all. Wonderful presentation. What a variety tonight. This was excellent. So I thank you all, and Michael Leach, I don't know if you're still with us, but wonderful to have you presenting here with our group. So look forward to seeing more presentations.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Good night.
Night all, and
Good night.
thank you.
Good night.
Night.
The number you have reached is
Good
not
night.
in service.